Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Tuesday morning. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. Back in my office here this morning. A couple calls this morning, doing some transactional work, and I just needed an energy boost. And so, talking about all things related to leadership and small business really gets me excited. So sometimes I just hop on here to kind of have a shift, right? So I wanted to frame up or have a conversation this morning just around talent. So yesterday I met with a good friend. We had some coffee and caught up, and I feel like coffee is like the lifeblood to so many things, right? So we had some coffee and we caught up, and we were at a small local place here in Middletown, and I had referenced the fact that there was only one person that I could see that was working there. And I was talking with the manager there for the first few minutes, just getting coffee and kind of talking about the day and just connecting a little bit, right? I love to connect with people. I love to hear people's stories. I love to know what got them where they are. And so we were just talking about, it's like, hey, you look, are you the order taker and the chef this morning as well? And she kind of chuckled and she said, no, he had a little bit of kitchen help, but they're short-staffed. And so we got into a little bit of a talent conversation. And because a lot of people are short-staffed, right? And it's funny because there's this huge dynamic of places who can't find help, and yet probably even more people who are looking for the right fit. And so it's this crazy kind of dynamic out there right now, and it has been for quite some time now. But companies really aren't thinking about talent any differently, right? But they expect, it's kind of like us showing up to work every day, kind of doing the same thing and not thinking about work differently and expecting us to have a different result. And here, small businesses and large businesses, small, medium, and large businesses are all kind of approaching this the same way, in the sense that not many of them are really digging down below surface level conversations, surface level decisions to really figure out what is necessary to shift this dynamic in the workplace. And so one of those stories that I heard yesterday in talking with his manager, and a phenomenal lady, like she was hustling her butt off, but it was, I was asking kind of about onboarding, because I know that kind of continues to be a pain point. And she's like, well, what we have found here is that we're going through people so frequently that we really don't have time to onboard. So that was story number one. And then secondly, what we have also found is that the people that are successful here figure it out. So there's a lot to dig in there. And so today I wanted to try to just at a high level, right? I could really dig into both of those stories, and I'd like to, but let me just flip this. Just a couple quick notes here this morning here in the office. And I'll just run through this list here. So when you think about talent, regardless of where you are, so I think whether you're in a leadership role, whether you're a frontline employee, whether you're whether you're a small business owner, you've got a small team, but yet you're owner, operator, you're all the things, right? You got to think about this. You can think about this through both frames of both being responsible for acquiring talent, but also what does it mean if you are the talent and you're looking for that next role, either internally or externally of where you currently are. So first I had, know what the business needs. So what do I mean by that? So knowing what the business needs is what exactly does the business itself, the business as an organization, small, medium, or large, what does it need, right? From like a business unit standpoint and a delivery standpoint, like what is it that the business needs, right? And then why does the business need that? So there's one thing to be like emotionally driven by, we've always had this role, or we've always had this particular spot, right? But when we look at why, and we start to look for those factual reasons to justify that position internally, sometimes that role needs to be reprioritized, right? Or that role needs to become something different in order to serve the organization better, in a better capacity, right? As we know, the market continues to change. It will always change. It's a living, breathing, organism. And so an organization and the markets will continue to change. And so businesses must change with it. So why does the business need that particular role? And look for factual, qualitative and quantitative data to back that up, not just a hunch or a feeling or, hey, we've always had, X role in this business unit, so we need to continue to have that role. Maybe not, right? Maybe that role needs to transition to a different department, especially as the business scales and we really start to have these true defining, departments within the organization, be it sales and marketing, be it operations, be it delivery. So know why the business actually needs that, the needs of the business as well as the market. Know if you need to buy or build the talent. And a lot of that's going to be governed by the amount of time you have and the amount of resources you have. So, frequently it's going to cost more in the short term to buy good talent, right? That's somebody that comes fully armed and equipped. And I can break that down if you're curious for another talk. But somebody that comes armed and equipped to step in and once they understand the culture, which is another driving factor we'll get to here in a minute, then they're able to step right in and add value and generally pay for themselves very, very quickly, right? I know that when acquiring or buying talent, that you can figure out relatively quickly that individual will pay for themselves multiple times in that first year, and they'll continue to do that, right? Where in the sense of building talent, that really is a heavier lift on the short term in the sense that you have to have a lot of systems and processes in place and help a person kind of get to where they're able to truly add value. And sometimes that can be, as I mentioned before, as long as a 12 or an 18-month process. And that's really expensive. I would argue it's expensive in the short term and the long term, right? And that's really where the onboardings and those kinds of things really need to be tight in those more frontline positions where that turnover is higher, so that you can get somebody in, you can get them wrapped up, and you can plug them into the business relatively quickly. And then you worry about actually, you begin to build them in other ways and actually lead them through an ascension process. So are you going to buy or are you going to build talent? And you need to determine that because, again, short-term versus long-term. And then do you have the process in place and the resources in place to do either of those, right? So those kind of four things need to be decided before you ever begin, before you ever begin your talent search, right? And then if you're internal over an organization, consider those things for yourself as well, right? Like in what you're looking for. So next, I'd like to talk about like attracting new talent. So if you've got a sales process and you kind of step back and you think about it objectively, excuse me, how do you go about attracting a client today? And is that process duplicatable in any way for attracting talent? Like most people don't think about attracting talent like they do about attracting business. And it needs to be arguably a similar approach or similar amount of effort and thought process that goes into nurturing those leads for talent. That should be a process that's always in place. If you wait till you need somebody to start looking for somebody, the amount of customers that you lose, the impact on the operations and the delivery teams on that is significant. And then it will end up costing you in other areas, not just that one particular role. What's going to cost to get that one person up. So it has a macro and a micro level impact on the business financially, and just the sentiment right now when everybody's talking about burnout and engagement and all those qualitative things that we mentioned last week that people are feeling. Talent churn compounds that significantly, right? You have high performers that are happy. They're going to become unhappy really, really quickly if there's constant turnover, because guess what? If you're a high performer and you've been someplace, guess what, right? Like you're the one that gets depended on to pick up the slack all the time. So let me reward you by giving you more work. So attracting and then acquiring the new talent. So that hiring process, right? And what that needs to be defined. And I'll tell you this just from personal experience, and in other small businesses, we always tend to go to family and friends first. That ends up being kind of a short-term, we think that's a great decision because we know them, we believe we can trust them, and that may be true, but that generally has some long-term impacts in the sense that they are not armed and equipped or understand from a skill perspective in a trade perspective and the ability perspective to fulfill that role long term. And so it's generally a short term decision. So do you understand what that hiring process should be, and the things that need to be in place from a vetting perspective on their skill set, their behavior, their traits, those kinds of things. And then the onboarding process, right? So that looks different depending on where you're bringing the individual in, what level within the organization. Then the actual managing of the role, right? Managing of the individual. And there should be data and metrics in place to understand what that's looking like, both short-term and long-term, how that's trending. The ascension. So we talk about people, most people don't want to stay stagnant. They want to know that there's a path, there's a career path. That's the term that's generally used, career path. I use the term ascension to know, how am I going to get from here to here, and what's in place to make sure that that makes sense for me in the long term, because there is nothing worse than being in a company for several years, giving them, adding value, only to recognize that, hey, this thing that I believe to be whatever defined, right? That this particular role means this salary and this amount of influence, this compensation package, this amount of influence and this amount of time, only to recognize that your expectations were way off, right? And then that leaves an individual feeling very empty, feeling very misguided, and looking for that next opportunity. And then lastly, successorship. So that's another area that I frequently help with, and really understanding when somebody is transitioning either to a new role internally, right, or somebody is leaving the role, a really planned a planned model for successorship. And so an understanding of what the responsibilities are, what resources are necessary and leveraged, what things need to be resolved or resolutions, and then what risks do they currently see from where they sit today prior to them exiting. And so it's really unpacking a lot of those things so that when you bring that next person in, that onboarding process is really locked in, and it sets them up to be successful in the short term so that they're happy and engaged in the long term, right? We have all probably come into positions where, hell, we might wait the first week just to get a daggone login and get our laptops, right? And that's a terrible, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And the same, we should care about that first impression on our people that we bring into organizations, because the best people figure it out on their own is lazy, and it's an excuse. Step in, stop complaining about the churn, and actually do something about it. Create a better system and process for the short term and the long term, and quit making excuses. So, love you guys. Thank you. I know I talked really fast, had a lot to unpack. I get fired up about this, and this is the majority of where I spend time working with small businesses around these things, because there's a lot around talent. It's extremely expensive. It's very costly, and it's a sunk cost that we don't have to accept from a small business perspective. So if you don't know how, reach out. There's tons of resources. There's probably 5 people that are my friends here who also have the ability to help with these things. There are plenty of people that can help with this. If you don't have the skills, that's okay, but stop making excuses. Love you guys. Take care.